Today, we're diving into the quirky, unusual, and downright bizarre world of British festivals. From ancient pagan rituals to modern day celebrations, the British Isles have got a long and proud tradition of festivals that'll leave you scratching your head in disbelief. From cheese rolling to wife racing, we'll be taking a closer look at some of the weirdest and wackiest festivals the UK has to offer. Let's talk about it. Alright mate, and welcome to another episode of the Dan Sensei British English Podcast, a podcast for intermediate and advanced level English learners that want to learn all about British life, British culture, and of course, British English. Now today, we're talking all about weird British festivals. But before we get started, please like, comment, and leave a rating wherever you're listening to this podcast. And if you want to support the podcast, check out my Patreon page for bonus content, as well as my study squad community. All the links you need are in the description. Don't forget, you can find the full transcript for this episode over on dansenseienglish.com using the link in the show notes. And if you want to download the free vocabulary cheat sheet for this episode, you can get it on the link below. But for now, here's some useful words that are going to come up in this episode. Inexplicable. Inexplicable. Something that is almost impossible to explain or understand. Cotswolds. Cotswolds. It's a place in England. Barreling. Barreling. Moving in a way that is so fast, it's almost out of control. Arse over tit. Arse over tit. To fall over suddenly or dramatically. Concussion. Concussion. A type of brain injury caused by a hit to the head. Mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. Extremely surprising and difficult to understand or imagine. Consisting of. Consisting of. To be formed or made up of specific things or people. Trenches. Trenches. A long cut in the ground, usually used by the military. Whopping. Whopping. Especially large or great. Monastery. Monastery, a place of residence for members of a religious community. Trousers. Trousers. This is British English for pants. You know, the things you wear on your legs. Bland. Bland. Not interesting or entertaining. It's a bit boring. Prancing. Prancing. To move around with bouncy, exaggerated movements. A fever dream. A fever dream. A very, very strange situation or experience that feels like a dream that wouldn't ever happen. Quirky. Quirky. Something that is a little strange or peculiar. Okay then, let's get cracking. The first weird event that happens in the UK that I want to talk about today is the annual Cheese Rolling Festival. That's right, this weird competition actually happens every year. Anyway, this famous event takes place in Gloucestershire towards the end of spring, and it attracts competitors and spectators from all over the world. In 2009, a record 15,000 people attended the event, and it's been happening for well over 200 years, and it shows no signs of stopping soon. Now, a cheese rolling festival might sound like a nice relaxing day of tasting different cheeses as they roll around the table, but this couldn't be further from the truth. The actual event is just ridiculous. The participants gather at the top of an insanely steep hill called Cooper's Hill in the Cotswolds. The finishing line awaits about 180 meters away at the bottom of the hill, and they're all waiting for someone to roll a wheel of cheese down the hill for some inexplicable reason. Now, when the cheese is launched, the insane people that call themselves contestants chase it like a dog chasing a tennis ball. The problem is that this hill is so steep that hardly anyone is able to stay on their feet for more than a few steps before they end up barreling arse over tit down the hill. It might not be much of a surprise to hear that there are loads of injuries during this event. Plenty of broken bones and concussions are on the menu every year. I'm not sure what goes through the head of the people as they're signing up for this thing. They must have a screw loose to want to do this. But the worst part is that no one ever catches the cheese. It reaches like 70 miles an hour. You've got no chance. And because of this, they decided that the winner is actually the person who crosses the finishing line at the bottom of the hill first. And their prize, of course, is the bloody cheese that they just chased down the hill, which, you know, is probably covered in grass and mud and probably even some blood by the time they get it home. Now, I'm not sure why you would risk broken bones and concussions for a wheel of cheese that I'm sure you could just buy from the supermarket, but you know, maybe that's just me. Now, if you fancy your chances, this event is available to anyone that wants to give it a go. And that means that people from all over the world like to try their luck and risk their bodies to win like £7 worth of cheese. What an absolutely insane thing to do with your day. Now, British people are pretty weird, and this is pretty mental. How on earth did this even begin, and why is it still happening today? I'm sure I'll never understand this one. The next mind-boggling event I want to share with you today is the annual UK Wife Carrying Race. You heard that correctly. A race that takes place every year where people run a race while carrying their wife. Now, this weird event takes place in Surrey at the end of March and involves racers completing a 380-metre course consisting of hills and trenches and obstacles. It is apparently a bit more complex than that, though. The wives must weigh at least 50 kilograms. And if they are less than that, they need to be weighed down with tins of baked beans. That's right. If the wife doesn't weigh enough, they have to carry tins of baked beans to ensure that it's a fair race. What the hell is going on? Like, who made this up? Honestly, it's insane. So my first thought was, why is this even a thing, right? Which then led me to think that there must be some pretty incredible prizes on offer to make you want to take part in this thing. Nope. Nope. The grand prize is a whopping £100 and a barrel of ale for the winners, right? They also, this blew my mind, they also get to represent the UK in the World Wife Carrying Championships in Finland. This is not even the main event. This is a qualifier for the World Championships. Honestly, it's mind-boggling. Now, there are some bonus prizes available, such as a pound of sausage to the person who carries the heaviest wife. And if you happen to come last, you get a ceremonial tin of dog food and a pot noodle. This is like a fever dream. It sounds like I'm making it up, but this is a real thing that happens in the UK. Now, this event has a bit of a dark backstory. Apparently, this comes from the Nordic invasion of the UK, where a monastery was pillaged and the females were carried off against their will. Well, it seems like the perfect thing to celebrate, but apparently it was reintroduced in 2008 with a more modern set of rules suitable for the 21st century. You know, like the women actually had to take part willingly. Now, I'm sure some of you guys out there have got an image of the well-educated, upper-class, reserved British gentleman in your head, and then you're faced with this reality of what British people are really like, and it probably couldn't be much further from the truth. And the last of many weird events that I want to introduce to you today is the concept of Morris dancing. Now, growing up at local festivals and fairs, I'd often be met with the sight of a bunch of middle-aged men, dressed in white trousers and shirts, covered in bells and colourful straps, holding sticks or handkerchiefs, and they would top off this outfit that screams height of fashion with a hat that was decorated with various flowers. And most of them seemed to have big grey beards, but I don't think that was part of the uniform. Now, they would just kind of stand around, and eventually the folk band, consisting of some fiddle and flute players, would start playing some, pretty bland folk music, and these lads would leap into action, prancing around and banging the sticks together in a strange, highly choreographed English folk dance. Now, it's actually hard to explain exactly what this is like, but I always found it really strange as a kid. The origin of this thing apparently dates back to the 15th century and was born from celebrations to welcome the warmth of summer and mark an end to the cold, dark winter that had just passed. It's remained a part of UK festivals since then, and has kind of evolved to the point where it's quite different in different regions. Now, of course, it has seen a decline in popularity since the Industrial Revolution, but you will still see it from time to time at regional events. These days, the uniforms and the music will be a bit different depending on the region, and now it's more and more common to see women involved too, but the idea is basically still the same thing. Now, if you really, for some reason, want to see it for yourself, it is most common in the Welsh areas or the Cotswolds areas, and you're more likely to see it around the end of May when we're having a lot of May festivals, or the spring festivals kind of take place around then. Or, you could just do what any normal person does these days and look it up on YouTube. I'm sure there's loads of videos about Morris dancing. Now, this is not really an event as such, but it is pretty weird and a pretty quirky element of being British. I honestly don't really get it, but it's definitely a thing. So there are some very strange British events and traditions that I wanted to share with you today. Even as a British person, I find them incredibly weird and hard to understand, so I'm sure you probably feel the same. I hope you enjoyed listening to it anyway. We do have loads of other strange traditions and events that I will cover in future episodes, but today's question is, what is the weirdest traditional event that happens in your country? Head to the comments or send me a message on Instagram to let me know. I'd love to hear all about it. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please do me a favor and leave a review on Spotify or wherever you're listening to this from, Google or Stitcher or Apple Podcasts. whatever. It's the best way to help the podcast grow and find new people. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you know what to do. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button to let me know that you enjoyed this one. And if you want to go one step further and support the podcast, why don't you join me on Patreon? $5 a month will get you access to bonus episodes, videos, and all that good stuff. But the most important thing you'll get is access to the Study Squad community. It's the perfect place if you want to improve your English, especially your English speaking, as you can chat with people and practice speaking about all sorts of interesting topics. We have weekly meetings where you can talk with me and other members, and the more that community kind of grows, the more chances there'll be to make friends and take part in English conversations. I put daily challenges there. There's always something new for you to try, and I'd love to see you in there, so be sure to check it out. The link is in the show notes. It's patreon.com/DanSensei. But that's it for this episode, and I'll catch you in the next one.